After a full week of misery, pain, sadness, other negative emotions, I got to work on the game. That's right, I got to work on the game a lot last week. I'm really excited about it. It was really nice getting back in there after a pretty difficult week at work. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of really exciting stuff, but it's always nice to be able to actually spend some quality time working on a game, and that's great. I got some ideas for some games. I should probably write those down. But this week, I got to actually make some pretty solid progress on the Pong game. Now, not quite finished with it yet, but we are done with the basic mechanics of the game. The game of Pong is built, and that part is pretty much finished. Now we're just looking at adding extra things like power up. I'm still going through that Burrow Games tutorial. That guy's awesome. You should definitely check out that tutorial if you want to dip your toes into game development. Really easy to follow along. I have to slow it down a little bit because I like to do the thing while he's talking. So I slowed the video down to about 0.75 so that I can kind of follow along while listening to him. But either way, it's a great tutorial. I highly recommend it. But yeah, so I got to work on the game. This last week, I got to work on fixing some bugs. I got the speed of the ball to work properly now, where if the ball hits a paddle, it speeds up a little bit. If it hits another paddle or the other paddle, it starts to speed up a little bit more, and then just gets faster and faster, bouncing back and forth as the as the game goes on. I even started working on power-ups. Those introduced some interesting problems, which I'll talk about in just a second. I still have an issue where the ball will sometimes hit the paddle at the wrong angle and just glitch out and go through the paddle. I'll put a video up so you can see what I'm talking about, but sometimes it'll go through the paddle and get launched off screen. Sometimes it will just launch in the opposite direction super fast. I don't really know what's going on with that. I don't know how to fix it just yet. I'm wondering if maybe there's something going on with the physics of the ball. Maybe I've got the physics set up incorrectly with the actual collision container that goes around the ball. I have to look into it. I want to finish the tutorial before I start trying to figure out how to fix that part specifically. We'll figure out what it is and, I don't know, hopefully get it to work properly. Or not, I might just quit. In terms of the power-ups, I recorded a whole screen record of what the problem was with the power-ups. I apologize, but I didn't realize that I was filming that in the wrong aspect ratio. So that's why the aspect ratio might look wonky when I cut to this next clip, which should be right now. Okay, so welcome to the screen recording part of the video. First off, I want to apologize because of the aspect ratio. I'm working on a 32-inch widescreen monitor here, which is great for work, not so great for screen recording. I'll try and make sure that everything you're able to see, I can see what you're seeing over here to my right. That's why I keep looking over here. But I'll try my best to make sure that everything you can see in the video is in the middle of the screen. In any case, if I haven't mentioned in the video thus far, I am working on the pickups, the power-ups. That's what this is. So this is a power-up. This particular power-up I have set to size down whatever paddle hits the power-up. Whatever paddle gets hit by the ball last, if that then hits the power-up, that's the paddle that should get affected by the power-up. So far, I think I've got that part down where the correct paddle is being affected by the power-up. So if I just show you what happens real quick here, this is the size down one, so the ball will hit the power-up. The enemy paddle hit it last, so it goes to half its size. Oh my gosh, that's crazy how that works. It's magic. Woo! I was having the hardest time getting this to work. So initially what would happen is the ball would hit the power-up, and then instead of the enemy paddle or the paddle in question getting affected, what would happen is the paddle would just completely disappear. It would just go, bye-bye, see you later. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me why that was the case. Now I'm still following the Burrow Games tutorial, so this particular video was a half hour long to get the power-ups working. That video is a half hour long. And so I went through it, and then I went through it again, and then I started going through it again. I went on the guy's Discord. I was all like, yo, your tutorial kind of sucks because, you know, I put in the power-ups, right? I followed all the steps, and yet the paddle's disappearing when it hits the power-up. It's not going half to half size. It's just completely disappearing. I researched. I tried to figure out what was going on. I went into my player paddle. You can see the node structure here for the size pickup. I was like, okay, I've got the size pickup node. It's going into the timeline. The timeline is going into the lerp. What does the lerp do? It basically causes a change from 0 to 1 based on an alpha. The alpha in this case being the timeline. The timeline is what is causing the change. It's a whole very complicated thing. I'm not going to explain it here because I would be freaking terrible at explaining it. It wasn't working and I couldn't figure out why. Well, it turns out the set actor scale to 3D node here, what we're doing with changing the size of the paddle is the paddle is getting changed on the y-axis, right? I don't know why I'm doing this. It's the y-axis. I don't know. Just because it's being changed on the y-axis, though, it still needs information for the x and z axis, or z. The guy says z. He's English, so he says z in the video. So I'm starting to say z because cultural appropriation. You still need information for the X and Z axis. You can't just leave those at 0, which is exactly what I did. After having gone through the tutorial like 2 or 3 times, after having gotten on the guy's Discord, I didn't actually give him crap on the Discord. I just said, hey, can somebody help me? And then I realized I'm a total idiot. So I set these to 1 to make sure that the X and Z scales stayed, where they were supposed to. He had us set up a node structure, I guess anyone else following the tutorial. He had me set up another node structure to set the paddle back to the right size, back to normal size here. When does that happen? That happens after 20 seconds. If we do a set timer by event node here, 20 seconds passes, boom, it goes back to normal. Bob's your uncle. So I should have just finished explaining what the problem and solution was with the power-ups. Definitely learned something there. That was great. I had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to fix that, which honestly brought me to something else I wanted to discuss real quick with this whole journey that I'm on, and that being the problem of tutorial hell. Tutorial hell is something that I hear a lot of creators and YouTubers talking about. You just keep watching tutorials and you're not really learning the theory behind how the thing works. You're just learning how to copy somebody else's work. And there's definitely a benefit to that. If you want an introduction into the program, you start by copying somebody else's work. I'm pointing over here because this is where my laptop is. But you start by copying somebody else's work. That's a great way to introduce yourself to the platform, to the whole new hobby that you're trying to take on. There's nothing wrong with that. But at some point you get to a point where eventually the tutorials are no longer helpful. You need to learn the theory of the thing that you're working on so that you can work more independently. Now that jumbled mess just brings me to my point, which is that I want to learn node structure. After I'm done with this particular tutorial, I think I'm going to try and figure out a way to really dive into the theory of node structure, because I realized in looking at the different nodes, I don't really understand what they're doing. I don't understand how they communicate with each other. I kind of get a basic idea, like set base speed. That's the variable base speed, which isn't actually a variable. I probably used that term incorrectly, but for sake of simplicity for this video, the variable base speed was set to 1.25 for, I think it was the ball. I can't remember what it was. Then you use a node that goes get base speed. You plug that into a multiplier, which then multiplies by the power up to get the speed that should result after the power up is picked up. And that would be the speed up power up. Obviously, that would probably help to know. The actual conversation that these nodes are having with each other, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me just yet. I mean, there are some nodes that are named really weirdly. It's difficult to understand exactly what they're trying to accomplish. I just realized my camera's crooked, whatever. It's really difficult to understand what they're trying to accomplish. After I'm done with this tutorial, I think my next goal is going to be to learn how the nodes are actually communicating with each other. Maybe that means getting into a little bit of C++, not really sure. Unreal Engine has a lot of resources on their website talking about the Blueprint coding language that they use. So I'll probably dive into that. And I gotta say, I really like the Blueprint coding language. I mean, it's visual, it's logical, it makes sense. I consider myself a logical person. No, I shouldn't say that. I consider myself a person who likes logic. With this being a visual coding language, also being a very visual person, I really like that I can basically just look at pictures of what the code is doing. And it's not really pictures, it's, little text boxes that kind of show or visualize how the code is interacting with each other. But I can just literally visualize what the code is doing and interacting with each other and understand what's going on for the most part. Now I can understand at a very basic level what's going on just if I stare at the node structure long enough, but I'd really like to get to a point where I'm not trying to spend so much time interpreting the language, rather I'm looking at the language and I can read it fluently. I think that's going to be my next goal after this. That being said, I've got a couple of games that I'd really like to figure out if I should start working on them or not. And I mean, are they simple enough to start working on? At that point, it would be I'm starting my second game. What should that second game be? I don't know. I want to do something first-person shootery. My wife and I both really enjoy first-person shooters. It'd be really cool to go to her with something and say, hey, do you want to play this together? But I feel like having a functional multiplayer game is probably something that's going to be way down the road. But I honestly am just really excited with how this week went. I made a ton of progress on the Pong game. I felt like I learned a lot, which was really exciting. I feel like if I want to extrapolate this knowledge to subsequent games, then I can actually start to do that. Like I saw some of the node structure and logic in this Pong game that I could also use for creating another type of game, like another shooter, or creating power-ups. Like they have power-ups in Call of Duty Zombies. I wonder if what they did was literally just something like this. Take insta-kill, you've got the skull, and it's kind of rotating slowly in the middle of the map. When a collision occurs with an actor or maybe a player pawn, depending on how they set up the first-person character, and if I'm saying that incorrectly, it's because I'm a beginner, so don't blame me, just stay out of my comment section. But I wonder if what they did was just set up a collision around that skull to where if the player ran into it, then it would trigger that whole power-up node structure that I went over in the screen record video. Obviously, it's not going to look exactly like that. I think it'll be far more complicated, but I wonder if that's the same basic idea. I'm really excited about where this is going. I think this was a really good week of progress, and I'm excited to see what happens next week. And with that, I'll catch you in the next video. Oh, also, I should say, first off, thank you so much for joining me on my journey of game development. I really appreciate it. Secondly, if you want to support what I'm doing here, the best way to do it right now is just give the video a like, maybe even a subscribe, maybe even share it with your friends. I don't know. Maybe you don't have any friends, in which case I'll be your friend. Unless you're weird and that's why you don't have friends, in which case I probably won't be your friend.